Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Let's Agree to Disagree Off-Road. It's episode 16. So today we have myself, Rais, Dailos, Dan, and Marwan. And today we're talking about differentials. So, who would like to start? Marwan, I like your smile today.
You always give me the neutral spot just to explain the thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So as you guys know, most 4x4s or every 4x4 have a front differential and a rear differential. And there are different types of differential which we're going to talk about today. One which is the open differential, which is the most common one on stock vehicles. Then the LSD, which can be available as a no-E part and can be also upgraded into an LSD. Limited slip differential.
Torso.
Okay. Whatever you're having, give me some. And then air lockers and electric lockers.
Yep.
So each of these four options have positives and negatives, which we're going to discuss today. And in my opinion, we could start talking about open differentials and their advantages.
Well, I already disagree
and
with one thing.
disadvantages.
So the LSD, let's say the True Track, it doesn't have disadvantages.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
It does
What?
have.
What?
It does.
What are they?
It does.
It
doesn't act. It doesn't act as a locked axle.
Yeah, it's called LSD, so it's not called locker.
It's limited.
So it's already
So
mentioning that it's a
there are
limited
cases-
slip differential.
There are cases
So
where
it's-
a locked axle will be better than LSD.
Yeah,
Therefore, it has limitations.
but never mind.
We'll get there. Finally, you're on my side. Finally, I agree with
I'm
you.
always on the side that's correct.
Okay, which means I'm always correct and you're always wrong.
Mostly.
So, open differential. An open differential is definitely cheaper and comes on most of the vehicles. How can you know if you have an open differential? First of all, you can use Google. And if you don't want to use Google, you can know by when you're taking the car over a corner. Let's say you're cornering left. Always, while cornering left, the tires that are on the left, that means on the inside of the circle, are going through a smaller radius, while the ones on the outside are going through a bigger one. So what happens in most cases is that the inner tires lock and the outer tires keep on giving traction. Now, on an open differential, as soon as the vehicle feels that or the differential feels that the inside tire isn't moving or has load while the one on the outside doesn't have, is going to send all the power to the one that doesn't have load and make it spin a lot for nothing, while the one that's on the inside is stationary. So you lose a lot of traction.
I would explain it slightly differently in that rather that it's choosing to send it one way, it just takes the path of least resistance. Whichever is easiest to do, it sends the power to that tire.
Since we're there, can you also explain? So I explained over a curve, but maybe you can explain it when somebody's stuck, because that would also actually be easier to
And that's
to
probably
diagnose.
what most
Well,
people.
this is actually why people get stuck. So they need to understand why does it get to a point where the vehicle decides that it doesn't want to move anymore, and I mean it's getting that wheel spin for and it doesn't give you that.
But I see what Marwan was saying. When you get stuck is when you'll most likely realize you have an open diff, right? Because one tire is most likely totally free; it's not touching the ground, and or even if it is touching the ground, it has almost zero traction, and the opposite side is most likely locked, that it has, it can't rotate, and that's the case when you accelerate. The one that's free is just going to spin, and the other one's not going to move at all.
Where in an ideal world you would want the one that is stuck to move,
Exactly.
so it can get you out.
Exactly.
So
The one with
hence,
most traction,
main disadvantage of
of an open diff.
an open diff.
Yeah. So actually, before we move, well, we are technically moving on to a locker or a locked differential. Is why OEM manufacturers would never put a rigid differential in from standard is because you couldn't go around corners, because then you'd always have,
as a standard,
as a standard.
unless you're going
Why-
drifting.
why you have something called an open differential in the first place is so that you can actually go around corners. So it's street performance. It's where the traction is full that you can't afford for slippage. Whereas off-road, when you have a lock diff, you can afford that one tire slips and one tire has proper traction.
Can I just add something to it? Now, in terms of street performance, pure street performance, you want an LSD at the back. But in street comfort, and I would say wear and tear, plus preserving the axle shafts and the mechanical parts, this is where you would want an open diff.
Yeah.
Okay. An LSD, when you're doing street racing, is actually kicks in at the right moment
When you need it.
but can also be scary for someone who has no idea of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So how does the
So the way I would summarize an LSD is that it gives you kind of the best of both worlds. It gives you really good street performance because it works like an open diff when you need to, and once it's under pressure, off-road or in certain circumstances like you're racing, it acts as a lock diff where both tires will be moving.
It doesn't act like a lock. It kicks in, but it doesn't act like a full lock 50%.
It's a simulation.
Distribution.
Yeah.
Well, you can,
That's the ideal.
okay. The open diff has spider gears. Okay.
Yeah.
This is also a bad thing about the open diffs.
Why? Dad loves spider gears.
Okay. Now, the spider gears on the open diffs, especially coming from stock, are extremely bad. After a lot of, after maybe, like, depending on how you drive, how you accelerate, they start to have clearance problems and start making noise, and they can even...
Probably the first time you get stuck on sand, you'll have
You're
issues.
going to have that. Now, upgrading to an LSD could eliminate these spider gears. You have two options in the market that are known. Some are Yukon, and some are from Eaton.
Yeah,
The Yukon ones,
that's the sound of the Yukon.
you still use the spider gears. It still uses spider gears, but they're much stronger, and even the housing is much stronger. Whereas
and much noisier.
the True Track is awesome.
Yeah, it's like the Rolls Royce of LSDs.
It's the Rolls Royce of LSDs. It doesn't use spider gears, and it's, you were saying it during our side chat when I pretended I wasn't listening, that it's a completely sealed unit, non-serviceable. That means nothing can go wrong with it unless you're really abusing the hell out of it.
Well,
Nothing should go wrong with it.
Yeah, it has helical gears instead of spider gears that last much longer.
So you're saying it's maintenance free?
Yes,
Essentially,
the Eaton Performance True Tracks. Yeah,
It's a sealed unit. You can't.
Assuming you have oil in your diff,
yeah.
it's maintenance.
And I don't think even not having oil will affect it. I mean, immediately it will take some time to affect how strong that system is. So yeah, but yeah, you can the moment you actually, I mean, even if you decide for whatever reason to remove it and install it on another vehicle, I mean, you don't have to do anything to it. You just remove it,
and
put the assembly, and that's it.
one of the main things I like about it compared to lockers, which we'll get onto, is you don't need to switch it on.
Yeah.
You don't need to engage it. It's just always working. And there's cases like the first. So I was driving with my spider gears, and I only changed LSDs because it broke, because it stopped working. My teeth were all destroyed and basically need to be replaced. So
Yeah, the story of our lives.
yeah.
Thank you, Jim, for sending all these cars to our workshop.
So I forgot my point now. So yeah,
So
the
that's
main
why
thing
you
is,
changed.
the main yeah, that's why I changed. And what I really like about it is that it doesn't really affect the way I drive. I haven't had to change my driving style, but there's in certain scenarios that I've noticed that things that I had to drive around before, like losing grip on one tire, now I don't.
Yeah.
And it did in some aspects, it did remove a little bit of fun. Like when you're on the side slope and you're cresting, you actually have too much grip, so then you can't slide as easily as you used to be with spider gears.
Yeah, but when you
But-
intentionally drift, you do a better drift with it actually.
On a flat surface, yeah, of
Yeah.
course. But I'm talking about on a side crest, on a slope.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. You have to actually slow down a bit because you have too much traction.
No, but I think that has other factors in it. I mean, again, what tire do you have? What ring and pinion do you have? I mean, all of these factors will work together,
Yeah.
as you said, because for example, I had the LSDs while having the let's say the Duratrack tires, the Goodyears. So as you said, at some point I wouldn't have that slide, and that would be good because at the top of the dune before the crest when it's softer, I still have that kick in where I pass it easily. Let's say when I changed that to the STT Pros, which are heavier, I lost that. I mean, it still was doing its effort, but I did lose that. So I think it's a formula. It's a combination of all things working together. So
What I remember my point now. The one thing I was coming on to say is that after I installed them, I wasn't trying to test them, but I was following someone, and there was a fence last minute, so they turned quite sharply, and I was quite close behind them, so I had to stop. I didn't have a chance to react and follow them, and so I got stuck in that position, just like you'd have with an open diff, one tire locked at the back and one tire free, and the other tire locked, other tire free. And so I thought, I have LSDs, I'll just drive out. So I put it into reverse and just press the accelerator, and not much happened.
Yeah.
It didn't really move.
True.
And that's when I was like, brought back my memory. I'm like, there was something that you need to press the brake. I didn't know at that time. I just pressed the brake a little bit, pressed the accelerator, nothing happened. I'm like, what the hell is this LSD? Why is it not working? And then I realized that it has that clutch point almost where once I pressed the brake hard enough, then suddenly the traction kicked in. So obviously the LSD started to engage and locked, and then the traction kicked in, and I was like, whoop, straight out. Whereas with an open diff, you'd be stuck.
Yeah.
I was like,
So-
whoa.
So we can say that the LSD functions like a part-time locker. So
Almost, yeah.
whenever it senses that one of the tires is locked while the other one is rotating freely, it locks and sends traction from the one rotating freely to the one that is locked.
Yeah.
Okay. Now these can be tuned, not the Eaton ones.
Oh,
But the Yukon ones can be tuned, so you can have them, let's say, engage at a certain pressure, so you don't have very aggressive locking, even on the road, because you don't want it for a daily driver to be locking when you're doing a U-turn.
Yeah.
In my opinion, all of these are not really interesting when it comes to getting stuck. Definitely they help. An LSD or a locker can help definitely helps when you're getting stuck. But an LSD, in my opinion, is amazing for high speed. High speed means, and obviously turn with curves. So you're taking corners at high speeds. Obviously, the inside ones have more traction, so they tend to lock. Power tends to go to the outside tires, so you lose traction on the inside one. And this is where the LSD can be awesome and just engage, give power to the inside tires, and then you're out with much more speed from the corner.
You definitely feel this on road. Off road less so, but you definitely feel it on road. But there's one disconcerting feeling, and you were kind of touching on that earlier, is that once the LSD does lock, you actually have to reduce the pressure enough that it unlocks. So I've had cases where I'm doing a high speed turn, and I feel resistance almost to come back to a normal driving. And that's as soon as you let off the throttle, you feel it kind of like disengage.
Really?
But what if? But that's in a way defeating the purpose. Like maybe because you have an LSD, right?
Yeah.
So you could.
But I've never experienced that.
Like in
as well.
such cases,
You
why don't
feel
you
it-
just floor it? Because this is where it gives you the traction and.
But I don't want the track. So that's my point, right? Is that let's say off road now. I'm climbing a dune, and it's quite a difficult climb, and I'm at full throttle, and I'm turning because the dune is curving. Once I finish that dune and I'm on top of the dune and I need to straighten, that's when I feel the resistance.
Okay. So
And I don't need it. So if I wanted to keep the same speed, I would feel resistance. Now I've got used to it. I just let off the throttle a little bit, and that resistance goes because then it disengages, and I can continue.
Reyes, would you say that with an LSD, once it engages and you have more traction, that you have less ability to turn?
Well, that is if you had the front one.
What about the rear one?
No.
At
No,
all?
not really.
I
I've
would
never
say you
had.
have-
No, I
I
never
would say you have
felt.
less ability. It's just more resistance to turn.
So
That's
the
what I
point is,
feel.
it kicks in when it does feel the pressure from the other side. But as normal driving or normal circumstances, it's
Okay, no.
just works like
But
an
let's say
open diff.
you're taking a corner very fast.
I've never, and I mean, sometimes I do drive fast. Sometimes I do take corners fast, but I've never felt that there is any negative or an
it's
extra
not
positive
resistance going
effect
into
from-
it. It's resistance coming out of the turn
Okay.
when you're straightening it back up.
No, I don't know. I've never faced that. No.
Okay.
No.
Anyway,
It's
it is a strange feeling. I gotta say, it is a strange feeling, and it's so much different on asphalt and on sand and all of this. I've been in a race car that had LSDs in South Africa. The guy took that turn like I wasn't driving, obviously. Like I thought I was gonna die. He was really flooring it around the corner, and at some point I felt like we were gonna lose the rear end, and then I felt these LSDs kicking in, and then just locked it and gave so much traction forward. So this is where I meant, like I felt that traction going forward. It's like if almost he couldn't steer, or it was a bit harder to steer.
Okay. Well, maybe on a race car, but not on a Jeep.
With
You're practically driving a
Golf.
moving wall, so
Yeah, in the Golf, I'm sure Dailos has had this as well. You get that same feeling. It's not LSDs per se. It's the four motion system, hydraulic, but it's the same. You're like you feel like you're losing it almost, and then suddenly it's like okay, let's keep going.
It just goes.
Yeah, that's
I like your sounds today.
Yeah. It's very vocal.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so LSD.
So basically, we don't need to talk about lockers. We all love LSDs, right?
Not necessarily.
No, but I mean,
Well, let's talk about the
there are
advantages.
points where you will. I mean, lockers
Yeah.
they do give an extra edge.
So an LSD will lock whenever it feels the need to.
Yeah.
Okay, but a locker is on demand. So why would a locker have advantages and disadvantages, and what are they?
Rock crawling.
Okay.
No, but even driving on in the desert, I mean, there are who drive on lockers on high speed, and it does give an edge because you have the whole distribution of power 50% the whole time.
Yeah.
So you're not losing any traction on any side. It's
But then,
full traction the
but
whole.
so again, then the point comes to when you're turning, right?
Yeah, but on sand, it's not a big issue.
It's not a big issue, but you do lose performance compared to an LSD when you're turning.
I think you gain performance, not lose it.
When you're turning?
Yeah, because in the end, the sand, you don't have
but the one
a
that-
stiff ground that will hold or give
Correct,
you
but
any
you're having
resistance.
So you're having slip, so that's not traction. They're slipping.
Slipping
So,
on
so
which
meaning
part?
you're giving 50-50 to both tires,
Yeah.
but one that's the inside tire that you're turning is has to slip so that you can turn, right?
Yeah.
So if it's slipping, you're not getting power to that wheel, whereas
you
the
might
other
get-
one's giving you
You
power.
might get better turning actually,
What do you mean?
because it's turning on the same high speed at the external one. So
Then
it
you
will be
wouldn't
pushing
turn.
in.
You need them to. You need it to reduce.
I mean, you're on sand.
Yeah, so that's my point.
You're on
if
sand.
you are gonna turn, with a locked diff, then it has to slip. It
Yes.
can't not slip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you're on.
So if you're
sand.
not slip, then you're not getting the power. You're not getting the power that to the ground. You're not translating it into motion. Whereas in LSD you would be, because the one that has optimum grip is giving you optimum.
Okay, I have a question. On a straight, would you have more power, or can you get more speeds, higher speeds, with an open diff versus a locked diff on a
the road?
straight?
On the road?
Road, desert, straight.
Would you have on a
If
straight?
there's no slippage, yes. You get more. With
No, I think an open one would be performing better on a straight line.
Because less resistance and less
Yeah, exactly.
friction and all of this.
That's why
No.
even on race cars, whenever they do drag racing, they turn off the traction.
Drag
makes
racing,
sense.
they always have a locked diff.
No, drag racing is
No,
completely different.
No,
Well,
You're
drag
talking-
racing
no.
is a straight line.
you're talking. Let's say you're driving one of the supercars, and if you want to drag a race with it, you would turn off the traction, so you would get better acceleration, you get better speed.
No, you turn off the traction because you don't want the computer to limit your performance.
Yeah,
you don't want to
that's
limit the
all part
power.
of all
And
part
that
of
does
the
it based,
formula.
and that does it. That's why I said if you have no slip, lock diff is 100 times better. When you have slicks, when it's sticking to the road, when there's literally no slip, a lock diff will always be better than LSD. The only time when LSD will be better is when there is slip, right? Then it knows, this tire's slipping, send it to the other tire. Where there's lock diff, one would slip and one wouldn't.
But in the locker, it's
Yeah.
always locked, so it doesn't need to
Yes.
even get to that message. So So theoretically, a lock diff is always better, but
For a straight line.
it's not comfortable on the road and on the sand permanently.
Yeah, agree.
Okay, interesting.
And that's why you have E-lock or A-lock or air locker. You can switch it off when you're on a
So let's talk quickly about air lockers versus electric lockers. I think we can talk about this before we close the subject. What would you say is better?
I think air locker is more on demand than the e-locker. E-locker, you have to get it into a full stop, let the electronics work to connect the system and then move on. Air locker, you can basically do it whenever you want.
Are you sure?
As my understanding, yes.
Okay.
As my understanding, I mean, you might know more about this. I'm not. I've used lockers, but the technical aspect of between the e-locker and the air locker, my understanding of what I read generally is that usually the air locker is a better option because the e-locker, you have to go through the system. You have to,
I think it's
wait
just-
for the bottom, let the system connect and then move.
One thing
And
is
then
run
if
by
you
a
have
compressor,
that-
one is run electronically. I'd say that's the main difference.
Yeah, but the
You're
air locker
relying
is
on your
more on
compressor
demand
to-
because you're relying on a compressor. The compressor pumps in.
Yeah, but it's more prone to failing.
More parts, more prone to failure. If I had a
don't know that,
choice,
honestly.
I would definitely go for an e-locker.
Okay.
I believe it's more reliable and you've got less hoses.
But which one is more cost efficient?
It's a tough one now. Locker versus locker. E-locker is more expensive than an air locker, but if you put an air locker with air compressor, then it becomes more expensive. So an air locker can be more interesting if you already have a good air compressor. You just add to it a manifold, and then you can control. You can use your air compressor for tires, and for your lockers.
Okay.
Okay.
What compared to an LSD? What's the price difference? Lockers versus LSD.
I would say maybe 30% more expensive.
Lockers.
Yeah.
30.
Wow.
Yeah, more.
And in
or
terms
less,
of servicing, because like we said, especially
LSDs,
the Etons,
No,
you don't really need to service. You need to do your diff oil change, but
Eaton is definitely awesome, and they also have electric lockers. Yes, I would say the LSD or the air locker, but mainly the LSD is more maintenance free than any type of lockers, because let's say an air locker has O-rings, has seals, and also these are consumables or parts that actually
get worn down.
get worn out. Exactly.
Well, but the
if it
thing
came
is
to
now,
me-
again, going through all what we spoke about, why would you go for an LSD? Why would you go for a locker? Again, it goes to.
I think we should ask Dailos.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to get to that actually, but I mean, what I was going to say is that depends on what kind of terrain do you mostly drive on, what kind of off-roading do you do, and that affects. Dailos, you've been doing a lot of off-roading, whether on sand, whether going to the mountains. From what we have been talking about, what do you think? What would you recommend the direction of someone who wants to upgrade the differential? What do you think is from your point of view, is the
What would you do?
optimum?
Well, I've been very happy all these years without anything at all, and I believe you don't really actually need anything. I would theoretically probably go with the Eaton. I would do, as I said, if my diffs actually gave up soon, which hopefully they will, and because someone sold me the Eaton, I wouldn't go with the.
I need commission.
Again, out of all the homework that I've done and all the people that I've driven with, I probably would go with the electric one. It seems that with all the people that I've driven with, etc., you can get a lot of complications with the air one.
You're talking about the lockers.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The air lockers. I think in general, if somebody does have just an issue with their vehicle and they do want to upgrade and they just want to go away from the OEM, I think the LSDs would be the perfect match, because it does kind of it gives you that 50-50 terrain. You can use them perfectly on the sand. They do assist and they do help while you're on the rocks as well. I'm kind of a little bit concerned about when they're on the road. I think I need to try one, because that's the only thing that kind of.
No, you won't know.
At all.
But I think I will probably try and get them installed very, very soon. So I'll be back. And I will give you my,
What would you go for? Like quickly.
We kind of touched on the rocks, right?
Yeah, we
A locker on the rocks, to be honest, in my opinion, is much better than LSD.
Yeah, definitely. LSD would help on small obstacles where you don't have that extreme articulation, and actually it would help in some cases. But no, I mean lockers is
Nothing
definitely a
defeats a locker,
different
I
different
just
level.
just a point. I don't know if you guys have thought about it before. I once watched a YouTuber, and he was saying that he puts the LSD at the front and a locker at the back.
This is
That's
something
for
I was going to
maneuvering.
say now.
Yeah.
This is for maneuvering
Now,
mainly. I understand.
in my
As a-
opinion, sorry then, just for interrupting. In my opinion, if you are mainly like 90% sand, I would go either two LSDs or one LSD at the front and one locker at the back. In my case, I have front and rear air lockers because I do more rock rolling and camping outside of the sand. This is when it comes to me.
And then when you need it, you have it.
Honestly,
on
if you're going, if you, as you said, 90% on sand, I would go for the LSD on the rear, not on.
No, he said 90%.
No, he
overlanding.
said lockers on the rear and front is the LSD.
No, he said he's got both.
No, no,
Oh,
no.
the other no.
Okay, guys. So what I said is that if you're 90%
On sand.
on sand, you go front and rear LSDs. Now you could put a rear locker, and it's still interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But in my case, I mainly do rocks or overlanding. So I would go for lockers.
Just one last question before everyone goes. Would you do both diffs, both LSDs, or would you just recommend just a normal user just to do the rear one?
No,
If mostly on sand or what
If you're,
depends.
50-50, 60-40. 60-40 sand.
see, and that's what swayed my decision why I went for LSDs. Is it's just no maintenance. You just don't need to switch it on or off.
But
You
would
don't
you
need to
do
think
both,
about it.
or would you just
Yeah, I
do
did
one?
both. In my case, again, both my sets of spiral gears were gone, so I did both because it's just a little bit more than OEM set of spiral gears.
I would say priority for
if
the
it's
rear.
mainly if
That's
sand
what I'm
is.
asking. So priority rear, and if you kind of feel a little bit there, then you can change
If
it.
none of them are broken and you want to put one LSD, priority for the rear if it comes to me.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh my god.
Yeah, agree.
We just agreed on the same
Three.
time.
And that bombshell.
I'm just tired.
Exactly. Should we do that on that bombshell?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very sentimental moment.
Before you conclude, can Dan do one more sound and then you conclude? Now you may conclude.
Okay, so I think today was not more of an agree to disagree rather than educational, and just give as much information about the systems, on how they work, what is the mechanism, on what would be preferable. Everyone can decide whenever if anyone have any questions, you can leave it in the comments. So I guess it's a wrap. So thank you everyone for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. And as we said, if you have any questions, leave them in the comment, and see you next time.